If you're unsure if you should start selling digital products on Etsy, then this video is for you. Someone left a comment on my YouTube channel, thank you for your inspiration, and asking me if I can talk about the pros and cons of being on Etsy and selling digital products. So in today's video, I want to talk about the pros and cons of being on Etsy. Before I start with the pros and cons, I actually have a website where you now can find a link to my new Slack community if you want to join. In this community, I will answer all the questions you have and update you on anything new on Etsy or talk about other digital products. So yeah, go to femaleincomecreator.com and you will find more information. I also have a little ebook with 50 digital product ideas. You will find a link in the description down below. And also, if you haven't started your Etsy shop and you want to start, then make sure you have your first listings on Etsy for free. And there's also a link in the description below. So let's get started with the pros and cons of selling digital products on Etsy. So first of all, I want to start with the biggest pro, and that is an existing audience. So you literally don't have to do anything but be on Etsy, obviously doing your keyword research, etc. But the audience is already there, and Etsy really tries to bring more people to Etsy. And we're really talking about millions of people. I compare it a little bit with a website. So if you have your own website, one of the massive cons is actually that you have to drive your own traffic to that website. So if you don't really drive any traffic from anywhere, it's very, very hard to get your products be seen for other people. Another pro why Etsy is really good is because it requires low to no startup costs. So normally setting up an Etsy shop is free. They do say that there might be a little setup fee, but at the moment I haven't seen anything, that they actually do it, but it is probably about $10-15 if you are required to pay a setup fee. And when you start listing your products on Etsy, for every single listing you pay 20 cents. But again, if you start a new Etsy shop, you can get 40 free listings with a link in the description below. For example, when you start your own website, it is a bit more complicated and you will have some form of fees. For example, I also have a Shopify shop, so my own website, but I have to pay a monthly fee to use their services, and I pay around $25-30 per month. So it is not that cheap, I would say. And I actually also have an add-on where I capture email addresses. So I had to pay that extra, and that's $8 per month. So that is another cost you have to pay monthly. So actually it's not only a setup fee you have to pay, you pay a fee monthly with setting up a website. Obviously it depends what kind of website you use. I used Shopify because I have many products. So it was just very natural for me to use Shopify. And the next one is a bit of a con for Etsy, and that is you have to pay quite a few fees. As I mentioned, there's for example the 20-cent listing fee. So every time you have a new listing, you pay 20 cents. And also this renews every 4 months. So every 4 months, if nothing sells, you still have to pay 20 cents. It doesn't sound that much, I have to say, but you definitely also need a bit of more higher ticket items. If you just have products which sell for like $1 or so, you might actually struggle a little bit to make money. And also every time you actually sell a product, you have to pay 20 cents again. Then what other fees do we have on Etsy? We have transaction fees, which are 6.5%. So that's not that little. And you also have processing fees, and that varies a little bit from country to country. I live in Sweden and sell from Sweden, and therefore I have to pay 4% processing fees. So yeah, I think a lot of people complain about the fees. So it's more than 10% you really pay. That's obviously not ideal compared to a website, I would say. You normally just pay a fee for using Stripe or PayPal, and it's quite low. And for example, on Shopify, I wrote it down here, card rate starting at 1.6% plus 20 cents, and then also 2% for third-party payment providers. And then maybe, I guess, a pro is also for Etsy, you don't really need a branding. Although I really recommend having a brand on Etsy to stand out from all your competitors on Etsy, it is not really necessary. You can easily survive of not really having a brand. Obviously, you have to name your shop and maybe do a logo, but it's nothing you really have to invest a lot of time in if you don't want to. Therefore, you don't need, branding or design skills, and you can just sell on Etsy without these skills. And then when you have your own website, obviously you want a little bit of your brand because you have to kind of design your website. It should have a certain look and feel so people really recognize what your shop is about and what kind of brand you have. So that requires a little bit of skills, I would say. Obviously, if you have the money, you can can pay someone to build your brand. But you know, if you're anything like me, you don't have much money at the beginning when you start your Etsy shop, so you do a lot yourself. And when you have a website, you have to put a little bit more effort compared to when you start your shop on Etsy. And then Etsy really provides ease of use. So everything is quite straightforward on Etsy. It shows you what you have to fill in when you put a listing on Etsy. It's also very easy to manage orders and to process payments on Etsy. Compared to a website like Shopify, for example, I would say it's not too bad, but it does require a little bit of reading. Like I had to really look up a few things, how Shopify works and what I need, especially selling digital products. I had to download an extra app for that and integrate it on Shopify so I could make sure that people receive a digital download straight away after they paid on my website. But in general, I also had a little bit of experience with websites. I built WordPress websites, although using templates and not from scratch, but using templates. For me, it was not as difficult to set up my Shopify website, but it can be a little bit trickier than building your Etsy shop. It definitely took more time to build my Shopify website than setting up my Etsy shop. So that's a pro for Etsy. One con for Etsy is definitely that your shop depends on certain policies. You really need to know what is allowed on Etsy and what isn't. And obviously they have a lot of different rules. No one really reads about them. So it can happen that your shop gets suspended and all your work could disappear in a second. And that's very scary, of course. So you have to make sure that everything is fine with Etsy policies. And obviously when you have your own website, there is not really such a danger. But of course, stay away from any trademarked products. Even on your website, those brands, for example, will find you, even if you are not on a marketplace but have your own website. But it is definitely not as easy as on Etsy to suspend your whole website. So you are a little bit on the safe side when you have your own website. You have more control with your own website than with your shop on Etsy. So that's a con for Etsy. Another con for Etsy is that it is really competitive. Although they have a large audience, which is such a big pro, it is also very competitive. So you have to make sure to do your research, to know what people want and create outstanding products and price them also decently so people will buy your product compared to competitive products. When you have your own website, there is no competition. When people land on your website, it's all they see. But obviously it's not super easy to drive traffic to your website. But then again, yeah, when they land on your website, they have your brand and you can even upsell. So you make sure that people buy your product and many of your products. Last but not least, I wanted to mention email marketing, so capturing emails. It is not that long ago that Etsy was really perfect. You could use third-party providers who would automatically send an email to everyone who bought a product from you and invite them to join your newsletter. But a few months ago, Etsy decided they will no longer allow this. So now it's really hard to capture email addresses on Etsy. Yes, you can put that on your banner or in your announcement, which I actually did. And also every time someone buys a product, you can leave a little message and then also include your link to your email newsletter. But I have to say it doesn't work as great as before when they had like a unique email where it was only about the newsletter. People signed up quite frequently and now it is here and then a sign up. But when you have your website, you can have also email sign ups. You can have a pop-up, which I have on my Shopify and works much better. And also it means like everyone who lands on your website can sign up. They don't have to necessarily buy a product. And I received quite a few sign-ups more regularly than on Etsy. So it's not an advantage anymore. It's not a pro for Etsy. It's harder now on Etsy to build an email list and the pro goes to the website. So after hearing the pros and cons of Etsy versus a website, let me know in the comments down below what you want to do. Would you still sign up to Etsy? Let me know in the comments down below. But for me, it's clear. I would always start on Etsy again because especially when you start selling digital products, Etsy is such a great learning platform. It is very easy to at least reach some people. So you can learn what is in demand, what your customers want. You can start interacting with customers. I would say it is a bit faster than having your own website. I would definitely give it a try and and start an Etsy shop. If you have the means, also start your own website, for example, a Shopify website. As I mentioned before, you do need a little bit of capital for that, a monthly fee, or you pay for 1 year and then the fee reduces a little bit, but it's still around $20 per month. But I have both and I learned from both, having a Shopify website and an Etsy shop, and I currently make more money on Etsy. So for me, it's really worth being on Etsy. Of course, I want to drive more traffic to my website, and I will after I have prioritized all my other tasks. So there is still a lot of opportunity to increase the traffic to your website. But also, if you don't want to start a website, drive traffic to Etsy, because that still helps you to increase your views and your sales on Etsy. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!